afternoon and welcome to Community Forum. I'm your host Byron Campbell and our co-host is Chris Dialli. Chris, good evening.
Yes,
Not afternoon.
not afternoon.
Right.
Good evening, listeners and viewers. Pleasure to be back again this Wednesday.
Chris, we have an interesting evening. We have a special guest this evening, I must tell you, Sandra Ferguson. You can call her an activist, you can call her an advocate. She's an advocate. She's a rural development specialist. So we'll have an interesting conversation with her, looking at food security and some politics also. So after the break, we'll be back with her. Chris, it's Easter.
Yeah.
And this Easter, we have lots happening. We have, of course, the Carifta Games. We have also, there's breakfast in McMorris on Sunday too. You invited Chris. So there's a lot happening for people to do. But I think the focus here is, of course, the games. But beyond the games, we know it's a highly religious and cultural event for the community. You have Good Friday, you have...
The religious community celebrates.
You know,
Palm
Easter
Sunday
Palm,
and
you have Easter Sunday.
so
So a lot to look forward, Chris.
Yeah, a lot to look forward to. I think the main focus is going to be around the Carifta Games.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hype. I heard the Grenada team, I think, fielded 61 athletes to participate in the various events. The Barbados team is already here. I heard the police talking about the traffic arrangements as well that's going to be in place and in effect to ensure that things run as smoothly as possible, and they were asking the public, to work along with them. So I think it's an excellent, Carifta costs some money to host, but you will hope that, with the participation, they could at least break even and give a good show in terms of everything else.
And be carried live on television,
So it's an excellent event. I mean, most of our superstars that we know internationally, like our athlete there was a Jamaican, Shelly-Ann Price, and thing was all came through Carifta. Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, Bolt, I was trying to remember.
Yeah, Bolt,
Yeah, all of them came through. So most of our Caribbean athletes that make it big on the international scenes comes through this process and are identified by scouts. We have a lot of scouts here taking a look at who they want to
And I know tickets are going well. In fact, one of the outlets were out of tickets today.
Well, you couldn't even get season tickets, and you can't get for the line. Everything done is only bleachers and things as far as
available.
Yeah, so
kudos. But of course, if you didn't get tickets, you can see it on television.
Yeah, that's good.
Excellent. Chris, there was some good news today, this week actually, and it's good to report on the positive things too, Chris. There was a press conference by the Ministry of Agriculture, TAMCC. They're collaborating to set up an agricultural school of excellence. And they want to have this by September of this year. And overall, the ministry, they're saying they want to focus on a more skill-based education. So you, early in the secondary stages, you can be open to skills. Not everybody will go in for the straight academic education. Some people are interested, some young people will be interested in more practical earning skills. And it didn't end there, Chris. They also reported that the hybrid pigs that were brought in last year, they're beginning to see it's multiplying. They now have about 90 piglets. They've started some limited distribution to farmers, about 6 farmers. Again, this is excellent, and with that approach, they improve breeds, but of course, additional pork in the market, because we import a lot of pork. We eat a lot of pork here. All this oil is pork, Chris, if you didn't know. It didn't stop there, but they also had pineapple training. They want to have pineapple year-round. It's a good demand for it here, not only the hotels, but we consume a lot of pineapple here. So I see this as a good thing, Chris, from the agriculture sector. There's a negative part, Chris, before you go on, let me say this one time. It's been reported and was printed in the local papers, well, electronic papers now we can call it, that South theft is on the rise. It's paying over $4 a pound, $4.50 a pound, sometimes as much as $5. And the exporters, what I read in the papers is that the exporters are purchasing these commodities, South, without checking from the sellers its sources. They're not farmers, they're getting it somewhere. So the exporters have a responsibility to ensure the source of the South. All farmers are issued farmers ID, and there are other means of verification contacting the Ministry of Agriculture. So that's a problem for the farmers, just the same, Chris.
Yeah, well, on the positive side, I support what I assume is Maribor School.
Yes, Maribor.
Maribor has been a work in progress in my view, because it started, it failed, it started, it failed.
Yeah.
So let us hope this effort is going to change, and they will have looked at the areas where they fail in terms of the school continuing. But one of the things that used to come out from that is that they will train young people, and they don't have no land to go and plant and exercise their skills. So I'm hoping that with all this effort they're going to make with Maribor, they deal with some of these issues. And of course, the other issue is, you can't train young people in all kind of science and then give them a cutlass and a fork to go and do the land. You have to find ways
technology.
to make, yes, and include technology, because the greatest problem we have in agriculture is labor and pest control and so on. So I'm hoping with whatever they're doing there, they take these areas where we have fell down in the past and try and rectify it and use a different model, if possible, to get young people excited into agriculture. I mean, Mr. Trump and his craziness now, we have an opportunity here, as I was expressing earlier on this week, that if you want to deal with the impact of this war to us, which is going to be inflation, whether it's through freight increases and commodities increases, the first thing we need to do is to find out within our region who we could ask to help us to support our food demands. And the obvious thing to me in my mind is Guyana. I would have thought that by now we'd have had discussions with the Guyana, the trade ministers, because the problem we need to overcome is transport from Guyana to us. We have Amerijet who offers this kind of service for bulk and moving cargo, and why can't we come up with some kind of formula, all of us contribute to get a regular flight of stuff out of Ghana. Ghana have many things that we could trade and reduce the price, because its CARICOM is right there, right, south of us. So I'm saying that this is one of the ways we could deal.
It's like a low-hanging fruit, Chris.
Yeah, and help the food security aspect of the agricultural side. Apart from all the training and the piglets and so on, that's fine. I compliment the government on those things. But now in this crisis, and where the inflation is going to come and hit us hard is in the food side.
It's in the food side.
Right? Yes, energy and transport, but you can't postpone a trip in terms of your vehicle and so on. Okay, you can't postpone hunger versus a trip. You understand? So I'm just saying that I, like you, I welcome what is happening on the positive side, but I think we could do a little more. We put our creative talents at
play. The point you made is very important, I think. Transportation, I mean, we want to link with Africa, and that requires transportation also. But the Guyana, further away. But the Guyana example is a low-hanging fruit.
And not only Guyana, Suriname too.
It's doable. Yes.
Suriname and Guyana produce a lot of food.
It's doable. But as you're talking about the fallout generally, to Chris, the fallout continues. It's going to continue. We heard Grenlec just today announcing of impending rate increases. You know, the cost of energy is going to go up, so it's freight is everywhere, and it's going to touch us. It's not touch us, it's going to impact on us. And I wonder, I'm not hearing, and I made this statement before, I'm not hearing sufficiently from the government about how we prepare. What's the impact likely to be?
The immediate short-term effects is going to be, for example, tourism.
Yes.
Right? Tourism, still those that come through air bridges, and air flight ticket costs have started to increase already. You saw what's happening with Caribbean Airlines.
Yes.
So it is going to start to increase. Caribbean Airlines asking the government for a subsidy on the fuel. So is going to hit us there, and even cruise. Because if cruise using bunker sea fuel to get their boats here, yes, we are a safe part of the world now because you have war all over the place in the Middle East. But at least if you want to come, the cost is going to go up. How is that going to impact our hotel occupancy and so and otherwise? So I think the impact of the war, because if Mr. Trump wants to stop the war tomorrow, the experts have indicated that the effects of the war is going to continue for at least 2-3 years. So we had to short term, our budget is 1 year. The medium term is 3 years. We need to now sit and look at all the assumptions we made for the budget when we presented for 2026 and see if they still hold and what we need to think. And government doesn't have much levers that they could press and use. So you have to get creative in what we're doing, talking about how we want to do the Guyana thing and so on. So we have some adjustments and talking.
And keep in mind too, Chris, it's an election year, most likely. As we talk about that, Chris, Project Polaris, let's look at the political front. Project Polaris, grand opening last Friday, Chris. Large crowd, very impressive, live on television. Interesting though, the leader of the opposition did not attend, and she spoke about why she didn't attend. She wants more answers. She says there's more pressing health needs to be addressed. She believes that preventative care and saving lives, issues like that are more important. She talked about priorities, but interesting also the DPM, Democratic People's Movement, is also didn't attend. And again, when we had Honorable Peter David here, he spoke about his reservations about it. Processes and information were lacking. But it's an important project. It's a big project. It's going to cost us. Generations going to be paying for this. So why are we so divided again on this, politically and otherwise, in the society?
Well, healthcare is a ticklish thing, obviously, because it's healthcare and you could die or not die. And of course, medical treatment and what we do know in the world is sophisticated. It is not as long ago if you didn't have a urologist here, you can't get to talk to a urologist in Barbados, any part of the world, through telemedicine. Yeah. So it has changed significantly, and AI is also changing the landscape in terms of speed of diagnostics. The issue is whether we need another brick and mortar. Yes, the current general hospital has its limitations and have its constraints, but do we need another brick and mortar? And I have always been critical of the fact that I think primary healthcare to me is far more important, and upgrading primary healthcare facilities, because that ends up giving us more preventative care than having to deal with issues. Because you only come to the hospital when you have an issue. But if you take care of yourself and you manage what you do for your health, because the first person responsible for your health is you.
So preventative health.
Right, and and that could be one of the things. I don't know if brick and mortar is a solution. And then we can't be everything to everybody. So I just saw Antigua is opening up a big oncology center, and doing things there that is going to attract people from the OECS to come there, because they're spending a lot of money with a Japanese specialists and so on and so forth. So in the early days when she was on our show, Ann Peters was with us. She was also saying that primary health care is a critical thing, and we need to continue going out in communities and having a conversation with our people about how they eat and how they do not exercise and how they do not sleep, and abuses on alcohol and other things. So I think it is important. I'm not criticizing the project from that, but I still don't have a lot of questions answered. So I'm not. So
Chris, but the point is, it's a decision made. They've acquired the land, they've raised $185 million, they've started a project with a Sultan. In other words, we need to get on board, it seems, this.
Well, get on board with hard questions being answered.
Awesome, yes, fair enough, fine, Chris. But we see how the politics is going and what impact this would have as far as influencing the electorate.
I believe it's more political than otherwise. You understand? If elections are around the corner, the government needs to have a transformative project on the ground that is going to be their legacy to them if they win or they lose.
And this is what they are banking on. Chris, interesting, last week the United Nations at the 8th Year General Assembly passed a resolution designating the trafficking of enslaved Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. And this was so Hilary Beckles, of course, he's the chairman of the CARICOM Reparation Commission. But he's saying this is a push for accountability for the enduring economic inequality caused by slavery. But interesting, this was adopted by 123 countries. 53 abstained. All CARICOM countries supported it. But the three abstentions that voted against it.
Not abstention. The entire European bloc abstained.
Abstained. But the three that voted against it, the United States, Israel, and Argentina. And one shouldn't be surprised.
Well, let me just say this. I think the UN is in need of serious revamping.
Yeah.
Because you can't have an organization representing hundreds of countries.
Yeah.
And 90% of the countries vote on a matter, and the three veto powers Israel and the United States, nothing happening, and then nothing happens.
No, well, this was not a veto kind of vote. This is the General Assembly.
Well, it sends a message
this is the General
that
Assembly.
they would not support it.
So it passed. Yeah, they said they wouldn't
but
support.
you can't pass resolution. Cuba is a good example.
Yeah.
Right? And yet still, they enforce things on Cuba that the whole world against, and nothing could be happening.
Nothing will happen.
And the UN was set up after World War II in 1944, up there about, to deal with inequities like that and inequality. So I'm saying the whole system needs to be reviewed because small developing states and SIDS really do have no voice. The most you can do is go on the pulpit and chat.
Notwithstanding, Chris, this was important because it's the first time this has happened. It set a course for more things to happen.
Well, as we know, reparations is not only about money.
Money, no.
Right? It's a lot more than that. It's about ideologies, it's about how they influence our healthcare, our habits. So education
but they're
system.
asking for apologies too and recognition of
and,
you know what's interesting, Chris? The leader of the opposition in the United States, the
Democratic Party?
Not the Democratic Party. It's a what's her name? I don't remember her name, but it's a lady, a woman of African descent. Her statement after that was Britain should not just abstain, they should vote against it. And the reason she put forward is that, well, Britain was the first country who initiated action to end slavery. Really?
Yeah, but
she
not
failed to
in the atrocities.
Exactly. She failed to realize the profitability and the gains made by the first
Remember, the British
countries.
government paid all the farmers when slavery ended.
All the estate owners.
Right.
That's correct.
And we have to remember, when Israel and the United States voted, when the Jews were persecuted by the Germans, and the Jews brought up all of these things, they were monies were repatriated to Israel to help with the resettlement and all of this and all of that. So, well, good for the goose and good for the gander.
That's correct. So it's an important development. Chris, anything else? Just one thing I note here. I heard our international cricketers, the Junior Murray and others, and the Fletcher, they were giving high praise for the lights at the cricket stadium. And they're saying that, you know, now we should be attracting more international games. And I read somewhere too that both the ICC, the International Cricket Council, and the Cricket West Indies gave an all-system go for the lights. If that's the case, great job, let's get on with it.
Well, there may be adjustments that were required.
So great, let's move on with it. Big thing.
Brian, don't forget, we promised to touch gender-based violence on every
And we'll be talking that with our guests coming through.
No,
Chris,
but we need to talk about it as well.
Chris,
and we need to always say that, you know, we as men on this show do not support any form of gender-based violence. And at our stage in our country where most of our court matters come out from sexual abuse matters under GBV, gender-based violence, I think, you know, we have to keep pushing and saying to our men, this is not the way to solve problems. And this is not the way to treat a human being, which is a woman in the case of a man, depending on how the abuse goes. So we want to always say to our people that we will never support any form of gender-based violence. And we're speaking to our men here.
Yeah.
Time for you to
We're
get
going to call it out. We're going to call you out.
Time for us to get help if we have that problem, and time for us to look and see how we could do things differently.
Well said, Chris. Viewers, we'll be right back again with our host, with our guest, Sandra Ferguson. She'll be joining us in a moment. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Holy natural spring water is a water for every occasion. On the field of sports, at your workplace, just open the bottle and savor the pure, refreshing taste. Holy natural spring water is produced in Mama Can St. Andrews and is available in all sizes nationwide. To order, telephone 444-7654 or 533-7654. Holy natural spring water, Grenada's purest bottled water.
At Maitland's Motor Sales and Rentals, we sell engines for all makes of vehicles. Toyota GT Corolla 6-speed, Toyota MR2 and Evolution 3. We've got transmissions for Toyota Noah, 2.0 Suzuki Escudo, Toyota Corolla. Windscreens for Grand Vitara, 2 and 4-door Escudo, Toyota Corolla front and back, and Suzuki Escudo wheel covers. Also available are motor oil, oil filters, crystal headlights for Toyota Corolla, brakes for all makes of vehicles. We sell C16 and Q16 racing fuel. Special prices on oils and accessories for customers who purchase vehicles from us. You're never left undone because we source the part if we don't have it. Maitland's Motor Sales and Rentals, empowering people through mobility.
none other than Sandra Ferguson, I think a well-known personality in our Grenadian context. She used to write a lot of articles. I don't see her writing a lot now, but she used to write a lot of articles, being very critical and asking very searching questions on topics that probably politicians never want to answer will duck. Sandra has been with Agency for Rural Transformation, still is, for many years, promoting the development of the rural sector of our economy, particularly along the female side, and seeing how women could be empowered to be more sustainable in what they do. She's a strong supporter what we call food sovereignty, but we call it now food security in a sense. So she can give us some real interesting answers for some questions I know we would have. She's a degreed person in agriculture. I think that is what it is in Sandra. And I've did development studies in Guadeloupe and Netherlands and so on. So Sandra, welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
I haven't seen you for many months, because if you're not doing your advocacy work, you're probably walking on the road to get this exercise and to get, of course, to get your, always call it now, work-life balance. So let's start with the agriculture, because I know that's a thing where you're passionate, have been involved for many years. You know, you assisted women to form cooperatives and all of that. What is your view now of what is happening in agriculture? I have been very critical from the point of view, I think the biggest issue we have in Grenada is labor in agriculture.
Yep.
And how we are addressing it. I haven't seen a strategic approach to address it yet from any government, whether it's this one or the one before. So what are your thoughts as an opening salvo on agriculture and the problems that we face?
Well, you know, I come from the development sector, and agriculture is key. It's really key. And in fact, when we would have done collectively under the auspices of the non-state actors panel, we would have done an alternative growth and poverty reduction strategy. And of course, agriculture was a key sector, because of course, there are many services, particularly in our context, that agriculture provides. So there is food, and related to that, there is the whole issue of health, nutrition and health, and therefore productivity, right? And of course, we have to look at that in the current context. It also provides ecosystem services, because remember, our principal crops, tree crops, they're actually forest crops, okay? So the relation to soil, water, and so on. We would have also looked at the issue of labor, right? And we have not done well, because there are a number of labor-saving devices. That's not difficult, but we are not sourcing it in the correct place, and particularly for women, because women, that is an area that women still depend on men for, right? So those are, you know, and it's a lot of resources and natural resources.
We come traditionally from an agricultural base.
Right.
Our country. It was cocoa, nutmeg, and bananas.
Yeah,
Bananas died on the way.
Yeah.
We still have some level of cocoa and nutmeg. We went into value added. But we never seem to be able to attract young people. The average age of the farmer now is 55 to 60. And the last report that came out indicated that.
Yeah.
Right. So how can we get our young people to recognize that agriculture is so important, not only for food security, but to be treated as a business, and it could be a major business activity that they could live on and support their families? How do we get them to understand that?
Well, have we been doing that? That is what we must ask.
No, we haven't. I mean, previous government, and I want to just add,
Okay.
previous government, this one, government to come, they give agriculture upon the lowest part of the budget.
Okay, but I
years.
mean, deliberately in a sense, because if you look at what happened after Hurricane Ivan, right? I mean, a budget wasn't put there. I mean, even the IMF criticized us, that we were putting everything in tourism and that we should diversify, okay?
But we must diversify the economy in the OECS, you know?
Well,
we are.
Yes, we must.
Yeah, we are.
But we have not been doing that. And you know, sometimes it's bad to invite people like me here because of institutional memory. And you know, but I'll try to behave well. you understand? Yeah. So, I mean, these things. Now, we look at the imports, right? And one of the things that we recommended in that strategy was the whole issue of schools. We have to start somewhere. So, can we look at schools?
We've been teaching agriculture and science for years.
Huh?
Agricultural science. We had Maribo trying chicken, livestock, all kind of thing, and it never worked.
Well, let me tell you. Well, I'm talking about it now in the context of school and school feeding being a market opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that you look at the whole issue of what's the local economy, because we put in this in the context of other stuff, you know, we're talking about climate change, reducing carbon footprint, you know, so therefore transport and all of these. And it would seem, based on what I'm hearing, and some of the work that the Food and Nutrition Council, and let us salute them, of course, they are one of those bodies that work with, you know, never get enough money and they spend it well, you know. So that's a place to start. That is a place to start. I remember Dennis Noel, when he came, he was one of the presenters at our, when we were doing this session, and he talked about our herbs. And he reminded us that nobody ain't coming in and rescue us. We have to rescue ourselves. And the importance of our herbs and the issue of nutraceuticals, you know. So that's an opportunity again.
Then we have Dr. Guido Massa, who have been around us for years,
exactly,
talking the same language.
Exactly.
But we don't, what I'm not understanding from our historical context, and nutmeg and cocoa would have provided families, particularly in the rural areas, the Hermitage and so on, and the St. Andrew's food basket area, with a proper life to educate their children, send them to university and so on. And we seem to have dropped that. And you get the idea that I don't want my son or my daughter to go and pick up nutmeg or pick cocoa, but never explain to them the importance of food and what these commodities do for us. Because in the US, the farmers are one of the greatest lobbyists in the US to get policy change, because they supply the nation with food.
And it's a security issue.
It is a security. So my question is, you have been deep in the rural economy, listening to the issues with people at that level, with farmers and whatnot. What are they saying to you that is not getting us to transition and keep doing what we come up from generations knowing supported our families? What are you hearing and experiencing from what they say?
Well, I don't know if I want to represent anybody, but in the concert, the engagements that we've been having, of course, you know, markets are always a problem, right? Markets are always a problem. And prices are also prices, you know. And of course, one of the things we have not done, and it's difficult again, is about scheduling.
What about production planning?
Well, that's what I mean when I say that, production planning. So, you know, there are all of these. But in the context that we have now, and what you have said, you in fact mentioned it, there are also opportunities. And food is important. I noticed in the the census.
Yeah, agriculture census.
Yes. And it's good to have women there. Of course, we need to have value added as well. And, you know, I think we need to eat more of what we grow, basically. That is what happens, you know. So I'm not sure that we should be probably cutting down something to plant lettuce. What it is do we have, okay? And what's in season, right? And we might have to go right back to basics. And again, having value for what we do. Now, there is a talk again in the census of part-time farmers. Of course, we know we come from, you know, that's what we came from, okay? And that is, I would say that's a good thing. That's a good thing, increasing the number, because it's no longer a situation where you had to have one, or, you know, you could depend on one, right? So let's all contribute something.
Do you think marketing board and what is happening or not happening in the marketing board is something that we have not, you know, understood how it could help? Because we talk about marketing and farmers having marketing, gain prices, how to price and so on. Do you believe, I don't want to say the demise, but the lack of marketing board being as prominent as it used to be is an area that we may have missed the boat?
Well, I am certainly one of the supporters. I mean, it has had major problems, and we should have checked it, right? But it was always important, and it was there about our nutrition and about farmers, okay? And it could have had, you know, what are the other functions? Now, you really think that because Papa Geese stopped buying bananas, that bananas were just supposed to go like that? Huh?
Yeah.
That was an opportunity for us to tell everybody, you know, let's start eating bananas. We want to save our banana industry.
Remember, marketing board had some of the best ripening units. Anyway, that's another story.
Right. And the other thing about it is also OECS. You understand? Because while OECS saying, you know, solidarity and blah, 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 up north, where was it coming from? Up north, where was it coming from? Dollar bananas, right? And we should have had transport, been looking at transport, so we could get some stuff from down here to up there.
Discussing transport for the last 40, 50 years in the CARICOM, we can't get a conclusion or solution to it. More than 50 years.
But Sandra, I'm going to shift the discussion a little bit. I mean, on your platform and as an advocate, you advocate a lot on governance and democracy and some of those issues.
Well, on governance and accountability.
And accountability.
Transparency.
And transparency. And one of the areas that you have suggested or spoke about is the Grenada electoral system. In your view, it's not representing true democracy. That's a serious charge, if you could call it that. What exactly is broken in our electoral system? Particularly, we're in an election year, it appears, or certainly it's going to happen. What are your concerns there, Sandra?
Well, I want to talk specifically. I'm going to talk specifically about the last election.
Sure.
Coming up there.
Yeah.
And I want to say that there was a good development in the fact that civil society, or the NGOs, it began with the NGOs, broader civil society, was engaged by the Parliamentary Elections Office. I remember at a Sustainable Development Council meeting when Mr. Mark Barnett was the OAS officer. We were about, I think it was continuous, was it continuous registration?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I said, but, you know, who's hearing about that? You know, because we were not hearing anything. And the then supervisor of election says the principal stakeholders. Well, who are the principal stakeholders? The political parties, But no, it should be us, the citizens.
Yeah.
You understand? Yeah. And I think we began to have engagement, and then when we did the code of political conduct, etc., etc. Now I'm going to tell you that currently I have no confidence in the integrity of the electoral system at the moment.
And that's a strong statement, so clearly why?
Right, and I'll tell you what. Now, in 2020, when we were called in, and they said to us, the issue of the card had come up, it had expired, etc., 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 right? Anyway, so one, we found out that on the Prime Minister's office, website, people were being invited to register and upload documents and comments. Couldn't understand this. And then there was the CBI, local CBI agent, who was telling, when you get your passport and get your voter registration card, and we were trying to find out, at that time nobody will say to us, well, can you vote, can you not vote? We know now though. Yes. So we wrote to the Parliamentary Elections Office, the supervisor, to say, well, what is happening here? Well, yes, probably we should be doing it online now, but still the law is the law, and you're supposed to present yourself in person, or in the case of shut-ins, you go to see them. We got back a letter saying, well, this is contrary, and that we were making allegations. And we said, but no, we sent you all the information. So we couldn't understand that. And of course, that was after a long, almost 6 months or so. The long and short of it, however, is I voted. And I deliberately spoiled the vote. And when I got the results of elections from the
returning.
Right. Of course, I looked at my polling station and I was looking at the votes. I said, but there's at least supposed to be one rejected vote there. There's no rejected vote. What happened? And so I penned it in writing, but I didn't make a fuss because, one vote would not be, it wouldn't change the results, etc., etc. So that was it. And I waited to see the results of the report of the OAS Observer Mission.
Yeah.
Up to now, it has never come, right? It has never come. Now, the former Prime Minister ranted and raved and stomped, right? And I wonder, well, why aren't you asking for the report? You understand? And of course, the office had 2 meetings. Well, I remember 2. I certainly participated in 2 afterwards. So one was to present the CARICOM report. Well, we had written to CARICOM prior, and that presenting the matter to them, they didn't meet. They didn't ask to meet or invite us to any meeting. And they were also talking about introducing a new voter registration, right? Voter registration process. And of course, we brought this up again. Well, I brought the matter up because this was personal, right? So I brought it up again. And when we had a second meeting, I brought it up again. That meeting, there were a number of officers, right? And officers tell me we try to minimize the rejected votes.
What do you mean you try to minimize? What that means? What is your understanding of what that means?
Well, listen, man, I am quite sure that I voted. There was no whatever, so I don't understand.
You probably didn't interpret your spoil vote as a spoil vote. That is a possibility as well. I just say, but from listening to you carefully, I mean, your first statement is that you have no confidence in the system.
No, I have not.
Right, so what exactly is the areas that you have no confidence in? Because voter registration is constant, and that I know they're trying to move to electronic means to deal with it, but I know they had issues with the IT system in recent times. So what exactly you believe is the problem that will invalidate an election coming shortly?
Let me tell you something. Let me also just say something. That during the conversation in 2020, we realized that a new maintenance, well, how to say it? The person who was a new company was supporting the system, right?
Software company.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember the name of it was based in Canada, who set it up. But I have to also commend the office. It was a very transparent process when Benoit came in, right? Of course, you know, with the e-grip, right? And this is something I'm not sure that we know much about, but she got fired, et cetera, et cetera. And then lo and behold, we realized that some company called Azits, which was registered in Pearls, right, was providing support. Now again, when that happened.
So what I'm hearing there is a lot of issues, but my question to you is lack of transparency. So what are the solutions? What must happen to give you confidence now?
And the second time, the second meeting, it was also promised that, you know, again, we'd have some engagement about this system and how it works, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we know everything, right? But when you have that kind of stuff, I mean, I am saying I don't have any confidence.
So I'm going to move on, Sandra. Hey, here's the thing. We are seeing increased use of data, projections, statistical narratives in politics. You have raised some concern about it, but are these tools informing democracy, or are they manipulating it? What exactly is happening here?
Well, I think we've been.
Like we have Dr. Justin Peer and others.
I think we're being manipulated.
Tell us how.
Let me. You know, before we reach there, I think I want to read to you from the preliminary OAS report.
You want to go back there? Okay, I'll give you a short time. Okay, fine,
right?
go back there. Okay.
Simply because the preliminary report spoke about duplication of, you know, registration and that kind of thing. And because we had a biometric system, the new one, right? When we had engagement we had the talks with them, they said, no, we could not have duplication. Because once it entered the system, you know, because you have biometric. So I would like to know how the observer mission could be talking about in elections 22, the conclusion of the OS. The system lacks control tools to prevent duplicate registration, since it does not allow cross-checks across constituency. The OAS mission therefore recommends redesigning the voter registration system in order to improve accuracy and inclusiveness, including a mechanism to carry out a verification process at the national level. We had passed there with the system that we had.
That's right.
You understand? So how we going back there?
Biometrics was for your ID card.
And
you
so
don't vote by biometrics.
How do we go, therefore, in 2022 election and have this as an issue raised?
Yeah, but sometimes when you hear that, you have to also, because as a voter, you have to use your biometrics to get your card to verify that you're authentic, and you meet the conditions to be registered.
Right.
I hear what you've just read there, and all voter registration lists, and I'm not making excuses for the elections office, all voter registration lists will have, it's a live list. You can have people coming off, dying by attrition. You have other things, and new people coming on. and so on. And that is why it's continuous registration. So the list at any point in time will never be the most accurate list, in the sense that you won't have captured everybody, those who have died and those who have come on. So you must have a play in the list, in my understanding, of plus or minus a percentage, and you need to understand what is the acceptable error level that you will accept in the list. But does that, to me, and the question I will, not to you, but throwing out, does that invalidate the list? Does the list capture 80 or 90% of the people who are eligible to vote? Just using large percentages here. And if it does, I don't think, when you hear that statement, it could be that further conversations needed to happen for the elections office to say, no, this is what we do, this is what is expected, this is a percentage error, and so on and so on. But obviously,
I know the conversation is interesting on that,
sure.
but I
let
want
me
to.
also say
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
that you know, this is not any. I'm not making any accusations, for example, against the new
Chief Returning Officer.
Either, because you know that is part of the problem as well. What we have been doing is that we have been having a lot of turnover as well. And you are having persons, in my view, who are not trained, right, and have the experience. And I don't know if there's anybody who they are understudying, but yeah, let's close.
That's fine. Yeah, because we're running out of time, Chris, on this.
The law needs to change. Because the supervisor of the elections officer is chosen from the public service. And probably we need to give that flexibility, because it can have political influence on who is put in the position. To minimize that, probably we need to make an amendment to the law that you look for the best person or you think who is best qualified to fit the position and the complexities of what that office brings.
Colleagues, I'm going to push this question aside because we're running out of time and we have some areas to cover. That's the truth here. The question I had put to you regarding statistical data, you're indicating, I mean, should there be independent verification of political data? I mean, there's a lot of data coming out. It's influencing parties' strategies. What is your issues with it? As far as those projections and statistical narratives.
Well,
really won't deal with politics.
Let me thank Dr. Pierre for introducing me to the science of
What's it called, Chris?
The science.
Psephology.
Psephology. Right, psephology.
Yeah.
And of course, he had said to us, you know, you take polls and you take data and you can break it down into segments. And apparently, based on what the office was also saying, it seemed that we wanted to get down to that level. And not only that, make the data available, because I remember one of the colleagues saying, listen, this data, when you take this data, this is this data, right? And there is a certain amount of privacy. There's not a certain amount, there is privacy. But basically, so Dr. Pierre has also been saying, you know, and based on that, you can target your messages, or, you know, if some businessman is coming, you know, and they want to, you know, they want data on what, but let's keep it to voting. I guess it could be related. Yes. So, and then of course it's social media too. So you use social media and you target and you send out the messages. And he seemed pretty confident that, you know, including UNC, he seemed to have done some work with UNC, you know. Interesting, he went to St. Vincent, you know, and had made some predictions, and that one didn't come true, and he said he was, that was too soon. It was 2 weeks before. But the point about it is that once you have all of this information, you could manipulate the messages and the target and so on. And it's quite interesting because, of course, if we look currently, the youth vote is being targeted. And if you see what is happening, one can wonder, you know, it's, you know.
But you see, more of this happening is likely to continue
Yeah,
because that's the science of it now,
Yeah,
they're saying.
yeah, yeah.
Right? If
So-
you don't follow the stats. But staying with politics, we hear a lot of talk about unity. Yet politics in Grenada feels increasingly polarized. Is it just a slogan? Is it real? What are you seeing?
Well, I am very depressed. I mean,
Depressed.
in the sense that you hear the leaders, if you want to say that,
Yeah.
but all the mouthpieces, something else, really, really polarized.
Yeah,
Really,
and we've
really
been having landslide victories. So you think this is good? Does it weaken democracy by eliminating the opposition voices when you have that? What's your view on that? Where you have the domination of one party over another, whether it's in the upper house or lower house.
Well, I believe that all who are elected to Parliament must be held accountable. And Grenada is a small country, so I think we have to look at some way that we can participate in the decision making, contribute to the decision making, and be all held accountable. So I'm not quite sure, I don't have, we have two houses.
Yeah.
We have MP and we have Senate.
But you have spent your life, a large part of it, in community development. Be honest with us here. Are communities in Grenada truly empowered now, or are they still dependent on central government? Tell us about the empowerment. What is happening there?
We need communities, and we need citizens who vote, to look at it and ask, why am I voting? Why am I voting? What are my priorities? And is it being delivered? Right? So I believe, as we have proposed prior, my sector, that we need to have more, I noticed town halls seem to have made a, comeback.
yeah.
But we need to have engagement and debates. And
Well,
let's have civil one. Civil one.
The debates is
Civil
the thing
one.
that you and I have been around long enough and have been pushing that concept a long time.
Yeah.
And we really don't know what our representatives really represent.
And ask questions. And
Ask
not only
difficult
that,
questions.
And not only that, maybe we should look at, encourage people. Encourage, and we should have some process. Let's go through a selection process. This is
Exactly, that
that's
is
what
part
we
of it.
expect of you.
But let me, the CSO organization, civil society, has
I'm
always
representing me, yeah?
I know. The
yeah.
question I'm coming to ask is not about you and your what you did in CSO. But CSOs have seemed to gone quiet. You don't hear much about the civil society organizations. They, to me, were more involved in advocacy issues. Parliamentary elections is a good one to look at.
Yeah.
But you don't hear them, you don't see them, it's like they're non-existent in this new political environment. What do you think is happening to the CSOs?
Civil society.
Yeah.
I asked myself the same question.
Why are you no longer on the government, I know past government maybe included civil society in its conversation? I don't know.
The social partners.
Social
group.
partners.
I
It
suppose
doesn't
this
happen
government didn't
anymore.
believe.
Why?
To the best of my knowledge, I don't think there's a social partners as we had.
No, there's not one.
Notwithstanding, notwithstanding the gaps in that. But I'm not aware that
No,
there's
there's
social
no
partners.
one. The Prime Minister did not believe that would make sense.
Sense, yeah.
He said so very early.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think there's one of the disconnects this government have is the communication style. And
Well, that's an issue on a need-to-know basis.
so that is,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that could go back to democracy and what we think is happening with democracy or not.
Well, it would seem that the tendency is that, we are dictatorial. We going back to, and I'm not only talking here, I'm talking, there seems to be a trend,
Yeah.
a trend. And of course, we have the right to make the decisions,
So good point. So let's get to the core. So who holds power in Grenada? Where's the power? The people? The politicians? or the economic elite? I mean, where's the power, Sandro? Where's the power of the people? How is it?
Well, you know, I think we are well bought and paid for. And yes, where is the power? And who really holding the power?
Constitution gives the Prime Minister a lot of power.
Yes, we know that.
Yes.
So it's like, is governance in Grenada inclusive or is it performative? Where is it exactly?
Well, I tell you.
But what tools do citizens have and advocate? Should they have, should they have more direct tools like recall referendums, participatory budgeting? Look, we're spending, I don't want the US amount, I want the EC amount for the hospital. $250 million US is how much EC dollars, Chris?
Yeah, there's approximately 600 million.
Yeah, and that's the preliminary cost. What is our participation in this? What is our...
Well, I don't know.
How did we arrive there?
I heard about the groundbreaking, and then I heard that we were going to have a consultation the week before. So I mean, I didn't understand that. That seemed to me like an announcement.
Yeah, that's the style of this particular government.
So I don't know. What is the concept? Because I was listening to you all to speak, and I know that basically focus on primary health care, health and wellness.
Yeah. Right.
Well, in fact, I have heard the Prime Minister, I think even his, what's program he has, DM?
Yes.
Right.
DM with the PM?
Something.
Yeah.
Something
Right,
like that.
yes, and he was talking about health and wellness. But I would have hoped that, that based on the priorities and the amount of money, right, that we focus on getting the community and the parish facilities in a better state.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, to just follow up on that, I'm not sold on Polaris. I must admit that.
Yeah.
Because I believe, as you, apart from the nutrition and what the Nutrition Council does do, and what they teach us to how to use our foods in a healthier way, is something we need to pump more money and particularly the education part.
Yeah.
You know, our young people tend to be more on processed foods than normal foods. Yeah. And we may link that to health issues we see now that was never wrong in the past at the level it is at now. So the question is, when we talk in health and wellness, are we talking brick and mortar, or are we talking how to, you know, influence and mind change to what we have known? Our diet in the past have been heavily on salt because we got that from slavery, salt meat, salt fish, salt. And then with the cane industry in the Caribbean was sugar. So the issue is, how do we change that mind construct to let our people, young ones in particular, that, you know, there's need to be less on the processed food, and as you say, eat what we grow, or grow.
Well, I think, and that has been around for a while now. I think it's finally, you know, the school and nutrition.
Yes,
I think they're finally
they encourage the food when they do the food. All natural and all.
So now it is about implementing it, right, and providing those resources. And there is a good example. There is a lovely example. There is a school in Sauters, I know. And in fact, there was in 2015, there was this Zero Hunger Challenge Initiative, right. So work was being done there, and the Cubans came here. You know, and I keep thinking of her in this situation because she spoke about their period, and she said, you know, we had the education and we had to use the resources and the education to solve our problems. And, you know, that was one of the things that Cuba looked at, you know, in terms, it went to permaculture. permaculture in terms of production.
It's a system,
right. And, you know, and in schools, what it did, right? And that's something we could learn. But that is our role as well.
Okay.
So now that school in St. Patrick's, they do from farm, from
Farm to table.
farm to table, right? And every class participates. So that is good.
Sandra, we run out of
Sure.
time. Is there anything that is important that you'd like to mention tonight that I didn't ask you probably, that you think is important that the viewers should know about?
No, I don't want to
You don't want to go there, but let me ask you a final question, so we're out of time here.
Yeah.
There is a, Grenada is seeing rising concern around gender-based violence.
Right.
Are we treating this as a social issue, or you see it as a national crisis? I mean, where do you see this issue?
Well, I think when Grenada, right?
Yeah.
And of course we shocked and so on, but if you look at the situation in the world
Yeah.
as well, it's rising, okay? And do you remember that forum we had in Arts Conference Room with Dr. Miller?
No, yes,
Yeah,
I
Chris,
remember. Okay.
you remember
That's
that?
a long time ago.
And I think that one of those things, that the lessons that
Yeah.
we should learn, is that we have to carry men along,
Yes.
right? So it is about men, well, boys and girls, starting there. And while we say that men should respect women, yes, I think that they both should be taught to respect themselves and each other. And I think we could start, that would be somewhere good, if we could start from that point
Yeah.
of socializing, right? And we also say that women, he who rocks the cradle or she who rocks the cradle rules the world. So is there a problem? Do mothers doing everything right? You would remember when Dr. Miller came. Dr. Miller talked about the problems, the immigration, and they were sending back the barrels, okay? And the guys were left without mothers, and they were sort of going astray, you know? So these are some of the things we can look at as well.
Thank you very much, Sandra. That's all the time. Chris, you have the final say.
But no, you know, Sandra, we miss your advocacy at some levels, not the part where, how your friend used to call it, when you started the show, you say, yeah, I forget what the...
Public nuisance.
Yeah, public nuisance.
The public nuisance.
And absolutely nothing is wrong with being a public nuisance in that you put Grenada first. That is what I always love about you, and the respect is that, because we've been in many forums together.
I haven't retired,
Yeah.
I haven't retired, but one
Yes.
must take a rest sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing
Yeah.
is wrong with that. And I want to thank you for those contributions you've made.
Well, thank you.
Controversial or not, I mean, that's not the issue. I tend to be controversial as well, so thank you.
Well, you know, Chris, it was really good, I think, because we started it with you, actually. You remember, when I say we now, I'm talking the NGO.
Right, yes.
When we started to have the public fora, you know, and we started it with the labor code.
That's right.
And, you know, I mean, that we know how to do those things.
Yeah.
We really knew how to do those things.
Thank you. I think the big question tonight is Grenada democracy working, or is it just performing? You know?
Well, working and performing could be synonymous, but at the same day, is how?
How it's working.
And I would also like to say,
Sure.
if you remember, the focus on the youth as well, you realize in terms of the entertainment and creative industry, again, you know, where the focus is, right?
Young people,
You know.
they had the energy, they had to take over from you and I.
Yeah. Well, of course, of course.
Sandra, again, thanks for joining us this evening, tonight.
Thank you.
Glad to have you. Viewers, that's all the time we have. We want to thank you for staying with us. Our technical staff, of course, and MTV community, MTV management. We'll see you, viewers, we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.
And let's wish our team and all the teams all the best.
Yes.
And the Carifta champion.
Oh, yeah.
Of course,
Definitely.
Carifta Games. Don't miss it. Okay, bye-bye.